This ghost story comes from a Chinese netizen sharing. Next, let's start the story. There is such a related legend in the city where I live. My hometown is in a northern city, and an office building called Huakang Mansion in the city is known as a haunted building because of the frequent jumping incidents. Huakang building is located in a very busy street. There are a lot of people underneath. I do not know who is in the crowd shouted, and someone jumped, heard the sound of the people, immediately looked toward the roof, only to see the top of the building stood a silhouette. From the shape of the view as a woman. Just when people didn't know what to do, the woman jumped down from the building. This was another jumping incident in the haunted building, and there is still no way to find out what caused this incident to happen. The main character of this story, Frank, was telling his friend Lai Ping about the new job he found in the Huakang building. Huakang building has 22 floors, and the company Frank works for is on the 13th floor. Although most people here know that paranormal events often occur in Huakang building, but as far as the owner is concerned, knowing that there are ghosts, he still does business here, hoping to utilize the ghosts to create money. And as for the employees, they are just forced to live helplessly. Frank just came to the company, is not in the right place. At the same time, see him as a newcomer, always throw miscellaneous work to him. And Frank also know the rules of the workplace. Bullying the newcomers is a common thing, so he did not say anything. Frank's first day of work was spent in the busy. It was not easy to get through to the end of the shift, but was notified by a colleague to work overtime. The colleague looked deeply at Frank, thought Frank would refuse, but did not think that Frank actually accepted. The coworker saw Frank agreed, then turned around and left without looking back. Off-duty time has just arrived. People rush to the building outside. Everyone does not speak. That kind of silence makes people feel very depressing. Even the patrol of a few security guards are not willing to come out. Less than half an hour, the whole building will be no one. The corridor was also dark. The only bright light was still shining out from the doorway of Frank's office. Frank, sitting on the desk, seriously organizing the information. In Frank's view, this is his chance to perform, so extra serious. Suddenly, the light of the office flickered twice. Frank felt a little tired and couldn't help but brace himself. Just like this, Frank worked until very late and finally finished all the work. He yawned, and suddenly there was a zipping sound from the incandescent light on the roof. And before Frank could look up to see what was going on, the light went out and the whole office was plunged into darkness. Immediately afterward, a woman's miserable cry came from the hallway outside the door, echoing in the deep corridor. The cry sounded miserable, causing a bad feeling to rise in Frank's heart. Although Frank was a bit scared, he still felt that it was all about scaring himself, and finally summoned up the courage to come to the door of the office and shouted out, "Who's there?" That cry surprisingly disappeared with Frank's yelling. The deep corridor was quiet and hair-raising. Frank saw no one. Then he hurriedly left work and went home, but along the way he always felt like there was something following him. Even when he slept at night, he felt that someone was standing around. That night, Frank slept as if he was half asleep. The next day, Frank was asked to work overtime again, and he agreed without hesitation on the principle of good relations. In the evening, Frank finished organizing the information, and when he was about to leave work, he went to the toilet. And in the toilet there was a big mirror, which was for people to organize their clothes so that they could see their whole body. Frank saw his own image in the mirror and was surprised to see that he was standing on his tiptoe heels as if he was wearing high heels, but he was standing on the ground on the balls of his 2 feet. Frank started to feel scared. He had heard old people say before that people who were possessed would stand on their heels slightly and walk as if they were wearing high heels. It was now midnight, and the consequences of being possessed would be horrific. Frank was so scared that he rushed towards the outside of the building, cursing over and over as he walked away the old man had told him. Just as he was about to reach the first-floor lobby, out of the corner of his eye, Frank saw a weird shadow coming off of himself, and then the shadow disappeared against the wall. Frank looked at the shadow that ran away, and the more he thought about it, the more scared he became. It seemed the legend was true. The next day happened to be a double holiday. Frank did not go to work, but his mind was still scared about the previous day's events. Frank called a friend to get the address of a ghost catcher. He needed to fully resolve this matter. Frank found the ghost catcher at the address his friend gave him. Frank was not polite when he met the ghost catcher and talked about what he had experienced at the Huakang building during the communication. The ghost catcher also told Frank that the scariest thing is not the ghosts that come out to scare people, but the ones that come to you dressed as ordinary people to tempt you. With that, he gave Frank a mirror, saying that he could see the true face of the ghost. Frank looked at what the ghost catcher gave him and thanked him profusely before going home. On Monday, Frank went to work and that night, Frank was asked by his co-workers to work overtime as usual. And because Frank had the mirror given by the ghost hunter, his mind was more stable, so he did his work in a practical manner. In that moment, a striking woman with alabaster skin approached, prompting Frank to rise and cast an intrigued glance at the newcomer, who introduced herself as Anna. It puzzled him why she would linger for overtime in a building notorious for its spectral inhabitants. Recalling the advice of a ghost hunter, Frank engaged Anna in conversation, cleverly diverting her focus. Seizing an opportunity as Anna looked away, he subtly positioned a mirror he had readied, directing its reflection towards her. What he saw in the mirror's reflection chilled him to the core. Where Anna's hair should have adorned the back of her head, there was nothing but a hairless, fractured skull, marred by a gaping hole that seemed to be engulfing something unseen. Despite the terror gripping his heart, Frank masked his fear, opting to maintain the facade of casual conversation with Anna. The ghost catcher had told him that people who jumped to their deaths could not be reincarnated. Their grievances were greater, and they needed to look for a double. Obviously, Frank became his target. Frank chatted with Anna for a while, and finally made an excuse and went home. He had to hurry up and tell the ghost catcher about this. Frank headed out of the building, but what he didn't see was Anna's body gradually becoming illusory, and slowly, Anna disappeared into the darkness. The next day, Frank finds the ghost catcher. He knows that the female ghost is trying to get him as a double, and if he can't fix it, then he will have to quit. The ghost catcher gives him some sealing charms and tells him to make sure he finds the correct location of the ghost door ahead of time, tricks the ghost into it, and then seals him. As Frank was leaving, the ghost hunter issued a stern warning. He must avoid the spectral doorway at all costs, lest he be ensnared and transformed into an apparition himself. The following day, Frank returned to his workplace, adhering to the instructions given by the ghost hunter. He discovered the eerie portal located in the women's restroom on the 13th floor. That evening, as he was exiting the office, Anna appeared once more, her tears shimmering like pearls in the dim light. Seizing the moment, Frank concocted a plan to lure Anna towards the ghostly gateway he had uncovered. Anna, still enveloped in her sorrow, unwittingly aligned with Frank's scheme and agreed to follow him. Thus, a man and a ghost, each harboring their own intentions, made their way to the restroom. Upon arrival, Frank hesitated at the entrance, citing the impropriety of entering the women's restroom. Left with no alternative, Anna proceeded inside alone. Frank watched Anna enter the restroom and quickly put the foo spell given by the ghost catcher on the outside of the restroom door. Within moments, a shriek came from the toilet, obviously trying to trick Frank into going in, but Frank ignored the commotion in the toilet and recited the incantation as the ghost catcher had taught him. Just as the incantation sounded, the charms around the door began to light up. At that moment, the door of the toilet suddenly opened, and from inside, a lot of rotten hands stretched out, and a heartbreaking and horrible scream came out. Anna's face burrowed out of the center and stared angrily at Frank, who hadn't expected to be fooled by him, seeing that it was almost time, and fearing that the night would be long. Frank made a gesture as the ghost catcher had taught him and yelled. The ghost door closed, and as Frank's voice stopped, Anna, as if absorbed by a huge black hole, retreated rapidly toward the back and finally disappeared into the darkness. And the charms on the toilet doorframe seemed to have accomplished their mission and floated down and landed on the ground. From then on, there was no more jumping incidents in Huacan Mansion, and Frank, after more than a month, had finally mingled with his co-workers, and slowly, the legend was only remembered by a few people. The second story is also a very scary true experience, which was my grandfather's personal experience. My grandpa was a worker who drove a boat because his grandmother had died many years ago, and his children had all gone out of town. He was a lonely old man who slept wherever he wanted, so he often stayed in the cabin where he worked for the night. Once about midnight, Grandpa was suddenly awakened by a woman's crying. Listening to the sound, that cry came from the river. In the dark night, this cry is very scary. Grandpa knew something was wrong, climbed up, and went to the window to look at the river. This look can be startled, only to see a white thing is floating downstream from the upper reaches of the water. The sound is from that thing. Without a closer look, Grandpa guessed that it was a drowned body. But if it was a corpse, how could it still be crying? Grandpa did not know why, but with his character cannot be ignored. So Grandpa took a bamboo pole with a hook and ran to the shore. The bamboo pole a little. The boat slid back to the Grandpa said, "The female corpse has been washed out by the current far. In order to catch up with him really took some effort." However, not far downstream there is a slow current of a small bay. The female corpse really stopped. Speaking of which, to explain to everyone, Grandpa always said that the drowned people, female body face down, male body face up, a glance at the past. Grandpa paddled the boat over to the female body hooked to the boat. But many boat workers are reluctant to do this, said it will be more bad luck, but Grandpa does not think so. He thinks more good deeds will get good luck. About 20 minutes later, Grandpa finally took the body on shore. But now there is no place to put, but also afraid of beasts to eat the body, or had to get back to the cabin. Grandpa mentioned he had placed the woman's body by the cabin door in the small courtyard, pondering that it wasn't the best solution. To somewhat amend this, he fetched an old sheet to cover the body temporarily, believing that was all he could do for the moment. Afterward, he tried to return to sleep, planning to inquire in the neighboring villages come morning to see if anyone recognized the woman. If his efforts proved futile, he resolved to seek assistance from the authorities. However, with the body just outside, sleep eluded Grandpa. He considered staying awake until daylight, but was suddenly disturbed by the sound of splashing water from the river, as if a large entity was navigating its depths. Soon after, heavy footsteps resonated from the riverbank, signaling an approaching presence. Grandpa did not know what again to the window to see. This time really put Grandpa scared, only to see a black round big fat from the river to the cabin. Grandpa also said that thing is difficult to describe. The height of 2 meters high, covered with water, emitting a pungent fishy smell. As if there is a human form, but does not look like. It is more like the water of what turned into a demon. Good thing the thing did not enter the house, but has been circling in the yard. But soon Grandpa heard from the sound that thing went towards the girl's body. He should be rushing towards the girl's body. Sure enough, when Grandpa took a look, the thing was looking towards the girl's body, meaning that it wanted to eat the girl or tear her apart. Grandpa then thought the girl drowned in the river may also have something to do with this thing. At that moment, fear no longer held a grip on him. Grandpa acknowledged he was unarmed, save for a large kitchen knife he typically used for preparing fish. With determination, he grabbed the knife, shouted to catch the creature's attention, and hurled it with remarkable precision. The blade made a significant gash in the creature's flesh, provoking its anger as it fixed its glaring red eyes upon Grandpa. Noticing a harpoon hung beneath the house's eaves, Grandpa seized it, ready for the next move. Yet, the creature, undeterred by Grandpa's defiance, let out a ferocious roar and lunged at him with renewed fury. But a lot of things in this world is not a human opponent. Grandfather with a fishing fork directly in the body of the demon stabbed a few times. The demon body fishy pungent blood flowed out, but that thing eventually ran away, not long to disappear in the river. Grandpa said that after the thing disappeared completely, he realized that his clothes were all sweaty. I asked several times afterward, and Grandpa said he really didn't know what that thing was. The next day, once the news was released, someone really came to claim the body. I heard that it was a girl from a small cottage, and when she came back, the boat was overturned by a big wave, and all the people in the boat were all right, but only the girl couldn't be found no matter what.